You guys have, I think you've already heard about this, but tomorrow we're having a panel for the worldwide teach-in. It's happening twice, 11 in the morning and then again at 6 p.m. Try to make it so everyone can attend. You can still register if you'd like. And I know Colleen is doing a webinar as well, right?
Yeah, Jessica Bean from Understanding Global Change at Berkeley is going to be leading a justice-centered conversation as well. So we're excited. We did not finalize details as early as you guys did. So we're still trying to get our registration numbers up, but it's a global event, so we're pretty excited to be partaking.
What time is the webinar? Yeah.
I'll put the link in the chat. Ours is at 6 Eastern. Were you speaking in Eastern?
I was speaking in Mountain, sorry, because that's where I am.
I remembered, I knew you guys had an event, so I was trying to avoid having to be at the same time, but ours is 6 Eastern, so I panicked for a minute. I was like, oh gosh, did I actually schedule?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's 2 hours earlier than ours.
Okay, that was my goal. I knew I didn't want to do them at the same time. So yeah, ours is at 6 Eastern, 4 Mountain. So it'll be really good. It's an hour. Jessica is speaking, and she has a co-presenter, Shelley Brooks from the California Historical Social Science Project. So we're excited about that. And, yeah, very cool. We also, while we're talking about webinars, I'll just keep promoting ours. We have some really interesting ones coming up that Queen is doing. I'll put our main webinar page in the chat. So after the climate justice webinar tomorrow, we have a climate and mental health webinar. Courtney Welton Mitchell is a social psychologist and practices in global disasters. And she'll also be doing an hour-long webinar about climate and mental health. And then we have one focused on energy and kind of like a misinformation webinar rounding out that whole series. So that's going to go through May, and we're trying to promote. So put the link in the chat, but that's what's going on with Queen. Lots of webinars.
I'm working on a couple projects. So one, working on a workshop. The title of it's going to be Stories from Our Climate Brothers and Sisters, but it's going to kind of look at the Bay Area's weather and how it's unique, but also how it's changing, and then look at the other climate analogs around the world that are also similar to us, but are also experiencing change, but trying to adapt and be resilient, and sort of taking in that justice piece, like looking at what folks locally, different populations of folks, diverse populations are doing to kind of both solve the problem, but also to sort of, adapt to changes that they're seeing and learning from each other. So just kind of trying to, do some climate literacy building in it, in terms of what drives our climate, in California. Why is the weather so weird? Why are we getting this sort of mega drought in the West? Sort of telling that, trying to use some geospatial data if I can to kind of tell that story, but also, centered around storytelling. So that there's really that personal aspect, like what does that mean for a young person in an Oakland school, for example, or something like that, or an indigenous population that doesn't have the resources that others might have, and how are they grappling with it, but what knowledge can we kind of learn from that? And then the other one, that Amy's on the call too. 10 Strands has an LOI second round webinar later this week that I attended. So we're been having some active conversations with some folks around. Amy, you were encouraging collaboration, as part of the process. So been reaching out to like Jen Crester, part of that. We're going to meet about that this afternoon, and a couple others, just looking for some areas where we could be synergistic in sort of an application process. And they have significant funding to kind of fund cohorts, like grade cohort work. So the idea was the applicants, would apply to focus, say, on 5th grade or on middle school or on high school, and then as a collective or an individual. And it's centered around curriculum and development design, sort of with this idea that 10 Strands has been driving. And Amy, jump in, because I may be not saying this, reflecting this correctly, but trying to get K-12 environmental education across the state, and then they use San Mateo's kind of as a flagship program, because they have a lot of great work that they're doing, and they integrate, that particular county integrates well with the city resources and efforts along with the school district. And so it provides a great sort of story and showcase model for what others might do. So that's exciting, and that so kind of working on that a little bit too.
Nice, and congrats. You said second round, so that's exciting in and of itself. So,
Yeah, well, there's 2 webinars, and it's great because they build on each other. So it's not just like a repeat, but it's like being informed by what we talked about in the first one. So it's open. It's open to anyone that's interested. So definitely. And Amy, there's a link to that. I think it's Thursday, right? Thursday, 2 p.m. Pacific, I think.
cool. That sounds awesome and really exciting. And I know funding is such a stressful topic for not a topic, but a kind of a barrier for so many people in this field that yeah, it sounds like working together is the way to go. Thanks for sharing that link. I just opened it and started playing. Cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everyone here knew about this. This was the $6 million we got in our state's a trailer bill back in July of last year, and it's taking shape now, and it's been really interesting. And I think of you guys here at the Clean Network a lot too, because we've thought of this as a California-based project, but we've had, and the topics and the content certainly will be about like California's climate change and environmental justice issues, but we've had a ton of interest and conversations with people outside of the state as well that kind of maybe just want to see how it's going and see if this is even a good idea or a model for how another state might put together place-based curriculum for their states related to some of these topics. So definitely let you guys know how it goes along the way. We find out April 8th who submits like the initial letter of interest, and then expect to do a lot of matchmaking because we don't just want the big publishers who always publish everything to do this. We're really trying to build coalitions of people and community-based organizations and environmental justice organizations to come together on this work with people with maybe the hardcore content or pedagogy or assessment or, some of those things. And lastly, just to say that we expect to raise a whole other round of funding to really do the professional learning rollouts throughout the state once the curriculum exists, because it's not just going to be a textbook. I mean, we're expecting interactive like data use and inquiries and civic engagement and all the things that teachers probably have not had any training in how to do yet in a lot of cases.
Do you know, Amy, if Italy or New Jersey has anything replicable or useful, since they're trying to do kind of K-12 climate education?
Well, I mean, what I hear, you guys may know more too, especially those of you closer to it, but I mean, I keep hearing that New Jersey did a great job of making the standards, but they have not really been able to invest in the implementation piece. And I don't know if someone else here can speak more to that. And, California has our frameworks in place and our environmental principles and concepts that are connected to the different subject areas. So we have this sort of, some of the policy pieces there too. But we have not, I'm not sure. What I've learned is that there are a lot of groups in different states or in like the mid-Atlantic region, understanding that there needs to be a strong relationship between formal and non-formal educators and a sort of regional networking people within regions to take this on. And so we're looking at a few other states and regions that do something like that. As far as Italy, I mean, we're aware of what they're doing, but it just seems so different. California is such a local control state. I mean, the state can't really make a district do anything. And in a lot of cases, districts don't really make schools do anything. And so, with something like a European country with a national curriculum is a whole different ballgame than what we have here, is sort of what we've learned. But I mean, we're definitely open. And that's why it's cool to have people be interested from so many different places, because they do, I think everyone has pieces of the puzzle for this. But if you have something specific, I'd love to know about it, or people that we should talk to. I think we just really went with a grassroots. We're trying to really, we have the standards and frameworks, so we've got our learning objectives, and it's in our ed code. The kids are supposed to learn this. But as far as the expertise, we're really trying to bring it from people all over the state who know it. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and the tricky piece, I mean, you look at like Amplify Science, and there's a lot of good content, but very like generically pushed out and not local phenomenon kind of based. And so I think that the second round of funding you're talking about for the professional development is going to be huge in terms of empowering teachers to access that local expertise to bring the curriculum to life for the local climate phenomenon that's happening. Otherwise, it's just kind of a glossy thing in a package that isn't rooted in their local issues. So it's awesome that there's going to be that second round to help teachers make it true to their community.
Yeah, and luckily within the science, we have had really, I think 6 like really, I think robust rollouts for NGSS implementation aligned with our framework. And so that, it's awkward that we had to, not we, but that people had to raise foundation funding to train teachers in the state's own framework, but that did happen. And there are a lot of strong, people involved, like on our steering committee, who are involved in that and know how to sort of do that, train the trainers model and roll it out when that time comes. So I think also, I guess educators are used to that. And what's different here is it really is expected to be interdisciplinary. So our social studies people have a less robust, but sort of existing structure. And the key will really be to bring them together somehow,
It kind of reminds me too of like, so, chemistry, physics, and biology have always been, mandated during high school, but earth science has kind of jumped around. And then now, like in Oakland, we have environmental science classes at the AP level. Typically it's something that like a junior or senior would take. But here again, it's like, it's sort of like you're saying, Amy, we have these global expectations, but then on the ground, when you look at what's actually required, it's different. It's not as mandated as it seems like as the others, as the core sciences, what you call the core sciences. And then the other thing, like you were saying about Amplify, and I don't know Amplify as well as I know FOSS. It's in some ways its predecessor, or but we did a lot of maybe 15 years ago when we ran a science institute for teachers around climate and energy. It was about scaffolding on, the environmental piece, the climate piece, the energy piece to what FOSS had. And that that actually was a great approach. And I don't know if it's similar with Amplify. I think Amplify does do better at integrate, but again, I don't know it, so I can't really speak to it too well. Haven't used it barely. But this idea that it'd be nice if, rather than having to scaffold something on, if it was just embedded, and if there was an expectation, at least within NGSS K-12, there's an expectation that you understand climate and you understand earth science. But then how that plays out is another animal. So if like creating a model where it's becomes embedded and part of it that's what I really value, Amy, about what you're all trying to do. I think that makes eminent sense.
This is, I just remembered too that you might have seen this in an email from me on the Clean listserv, but Clean is organizing a conversation with Natalie Stalpert, who is participating in writing the new science standards for Washington, D.C. And she's looking for comment and feedback on it. So I've been asking people if they're interested in being part of that conversation to let me know. And hopefully sometime in the next few weeks, we'll meet with her, and she has a little presentation that she's going to do to explain what they have so far and just ask for feedback. And I know some of you have already mentioned that you want to be a part of that, but just saying it again, it'll be really interesting. I don't personally know a lot about science standards or any standards in certain states, so it'll be a good learning experience for me, certainly.
I was actually a teacher for DC public schools, and I can say that the way that the social sciences are written, their standards allows for a lot of crossover into science as well as other disciplines as well. And there, when I was teaching climate change, my social studies teacher on my team was also doing a lot with population growth, which was part of a 6th grade standard. So I'm really excited about this presentation, and I see it as an opportunity for more areas to use climate change as that vehicle.
Totally. Yeah, I'm really excited you'll be there, Carrie, because that will be, your perspective, I think, will be hugely important. So.
One of the teachers at my school was actually a writer, so that was really exciting for me to see her name. Mm-hmm.
Nice. That's awesome. Small world. Cool. I have a question that I was hoping we could discuss today, but are there any other announcements or thoughts that people want to share? Hey, Ginger. We can come back if anybody thinks of anything, but so next week on the Clean Call, we have a presentation from Eugene Cordero, who's talking about kind of like quantifying emission reductions through education efforts, which is super interesting. But then the week after that, we have an informal discussion that I'm hoping we can dedicate to AGU. So if anyone is interested in attending AGU or is planning to attend AGU, that would be really great to have you at that Clean Call. So Clean is gonna, and we can talk, I need to let people know that we're talking about AGU at that meeting, so I don't want to go too deep into it, but it looks like presentations and sessions are opening up for those kind of end of the year conferences, and one of them is NAAE. So I was wondering if anyone here has attended NAAE or if they're planning to attend. Okay, Ginger, I'm obviously very green. I haven't submitted yet, and I was kind of wondering if anyone could tell me what that process is like, or they have presented there before.
Oh, as a presenter, I haven't presented, but see, I went to Lexington in 2019,
Okay.
and that's where I met Frank and joined Clean after that. One of the things that I would say was really interesting is, I mean, it was really good, and I had some really good interactive sessions. I would say personally, unless you have just a really crazy, compelling story, that trying to incorporate something that's hands-on or interactive, like small groups and stuff like that, definitely makes for a better session. I went to some really interesting sessions that were really just kind of, you know, talking head presentations about stuff, but they were really interesting. Like one guy was with a program, like a nature center. It's actually like a chain of nature centers. They're nonprofit, but there's several locations around Puerto Rico. And so I think he was actually, you know, initially probably going to talk about their nature education programming. And because they had gone through whatever hurricane that was a couple of years ago, 2018, 2017, he basically showed how it was very, very interesting because their nature centers ended up being focal points for community support after the hurricane because they had staff and facilities and could, you know, help distribute food and water and get people back on their feet. But they lost like 3 million trees on the island of Puerto Rico. And so like they converted, you know, they were already doing native plant restoration and stuff, but obviously they scaled it way up and could implement their nature programs. So that one was, you know, that one was just a presentation. There was no interactivity in that one, but also it was just so mind-bogglingly interesting. But then like, yeah, I went to like, I don't know, was it green? Is it still green around or earth? I can't remember, but yeah, the other ones had more interactive or small group kinds of presentations. And the networking is really, really good. It's a really good conference to go to. I've gone to 2 of them or 3 of them, and just always, you know, the only bad thing about NAAEE is that they have so many concurrent sessions at once, and it is really hard to pick what you want to go to. That's the only bad thing about NAAEE. So, and I was, you know, I went to the online one 2 years ago, 2020, and I was actually really struck at how like none of the sessions were interactive. And I was really surprised because it's in October. So they'd had, you know, 6 months of pandemic to figure out how to do more interactive sessions, I thought. But anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hybrid this year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that works. I haven't put in my thing, but I think I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna put in a conference proposal, but I think I'm gonna try. And go.
Okay. Yeah. I attended in 2018 with their 30 under 30 cohort, but that was kind of laid out for us. It was kind of like an agreement, you know, we did flash talks and it was just kind of, everything was already planned for us. So this, I've been to one, but not in the same kind of Clean needs to play, to, you know, present and go and have a presence, that kind of feel. So just, yeah, it's interesting.
Well, and does Clean want to try and have like a table or something like that? Or have you guys thought about that? I mean, like if I come, you know, we could all figure out who's coming and help figure out how to staff it and stuff like that. So the staff isn't stuck. And obviously the share fare or whatever they call it isn't through the entire thing.
Yeah. They have hands-on presentations. Actually, I'm going to share my screen. this was kind of their session formats, and they have, you know, virtual versus in person. I believe the symposium starts before, so we probably
does.
wouldn't be doing that. Okay.
Yeah, and I've always, because I'm not a classroom teacher
Yeah.
or working in a nature center or something, I have always just skipped it. I mean, it seems much more like a real training for classroom educators or regular educators.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I would talk to Anna about it more, but if we could have a table or something, that would be a good idea, because we do have some materials that would be good to share with people. And that way we would just kind of be there the whole time. So that's good to know that you might be attending, Ginger, and maybe in the next few calls I can ask too if anyone else is planning on attending.
Yeah.
Melissa, are you attending this year, do you think? If not, you have your hand raised.
Don't know for sure if I'm attending this year, but I've attended, you know, virtually the last 2 years and did poster presentations, and, you know, so you just submit your digital poster and they let you do like a 3-minute recording that you submit along with your poster. And then I believe it was in AAE that we also had like an assigned time where we could have a live discussion. Or was that at AMS? I can't remember, because I did posters for lots of conferences this year, but
They do. They
Yeah.
do have a live poster session, and actually that was in Lexington. That was one of the things that I was a little disappointed about, because it was a pretty short time frame. Like, I want to say it was only like 45 minutes, or maybe it was an hour.
yeah, it was short.
And the posters were still set up, but the presenters had abandoned their posters by the time I got there. In fact, I think it was because I was talking to Frank in the hall that I didn't get to the poster session. I'll blame Frank,
It's very easy to get.
because he's not here. He can't defend himself, right?
Yeah. Although, you know, you can easily get pulled into a conversation with Frank. This is good. This is good to know, though. Yeah, I just don't know what direction we would go. It's the difference between a workshop, a traditional presentation, a hands-on presentation. I feel like those could all get blurred pretty easily. But maybe then there isn't a wrong answer.
Well, if you have like materials that you could share, like a lesson that's hands-on that you could demo and bring, you know, materials to give away and stuff like that, then I would say do the hands-on one. And I think people prefer those.
Yeah.
I think there isn't as many workshops, right? Those are like a longer time commitment and there's fewer of them. So we've done workshops, like if we have like a new curriculum that we've released, so it's like a big thing and you would need more time to go through it. And then of course the poster is kind of like your lowest stakes, but I like in terms of time commitment, but I've made some great connections with the posters too, because since at least the last 2 years since they were virtually available, like I kind of went through and like browsed posters in advance and then like got in touch with people that, you know, that I had questions or seemed to do something related to the work I was doing. And so I feel like the posters were helpful in that way. People will contact you if you're, you know, if you're doing something that's related to what they're doing, or they have ideas, they'll contact you. So the posters are a good way to like get stuff out there.
Yeah, and I guess there aren't virtual posters too, so you will be interacting with people in person, which is always a little more exciting. Yeah, the time will be good to look at too. Okay, well, that's helpful. You probably will hear me asking people a lot if they're going this year. So this is the beginning of that conversation. I'm sorry if in the next few weeks you get sick of me saying that, but
Well, I mean, I think we should be asking each other too, because, and for some people, you know, some people may not may still be struggling with, or whether they want to take the time or the expense, and
Yeah.
would appreciate feedback. So I think it's probably good to share. Did you get so you didn't go to Lexington? They had a bowl of or bowls of fortune cookies sitting out at the event, and instead of just being random fortune cookies, they had fortunes that say, "You will be a strong and powerful advocate for a just and sustainable future," or something. And I still have it. I tucked it. I have a clear phone case, and I tucked it in the back of my phone, so it's there as a kind of a mantra. And I love
cool.
it. It was so clever.
That's a great idea. Again, I've only been to one conference, but it was really well done, and it was pre-COVID, so it was.
So that was, you went to Spokane then, right? 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was excellent, and it was such a great location.
Yes. Yeah. Lexington was the year after. It was in 2019, I think. Yeah. So it was both was pre-COVID, different times when it was easier to plan a conference. But I love conferences. I think they're fun. So that's cool. Is anyone thinking about going to AGU too, or I guess thinking about doing a session at AGU, or I guess they just started calling for proposals and that type of thing. So that's why in a couple of weeks, I think we should dedicate a call to that, because we got to start wrapping our heads around that. But yeah.
Gina, where is AGU? I know it's now going to 4 locations, right? So last year was New Orleans
I
and
think it's Chicago this year.
Chicago. Okay.
Yeah.
In December still?
Yep. I think they're rotating between Chicago, New Orleans, San Francisco, and DC. That's what I read, because I was curious, and they have this, like this rotating schedule. I don't know if that's the order, but I think those are the locations at the very least. So yeah, it'll be cold. It'll be cold in Chicago in December. But yeah. Anything else folks want to talk about?
I was just thinking a little bit about what you all were talking about with NAAE, which I've never been to. It sounds like a really interesting conference though, so I'm gonna check it out a little bit more. But when I did Spring of Aztec conferences, it was always more valuable. I thought we always tried to bring a hands-on piece, even if there was a topic that we were focused on, and it was the content. It provided a different way for people to interact with the information, and I think more depth, so I totally hear what you're all saying about a hands-on piece. It just brings it to life, right, conceptually for people, and with different learning styles and modalities. If you've got a hands-on piece integrating multimedia, digital assets, just different modalities, so that folks with different perspectives can really engage in it. I think those were the ones I always valued the most. And then we tried to replicate that in a lot of our presentations when we would do them too.
There's something about, I don't remember where I read it, but about a tactile takeaway. And I actually just got a jacket out of my closet that had a button on it, and it was from 2018, and it was asked me about my pledge. And it was from a session with the Portland Metro organization, which is in charge of transit, recycling, parks, all these different things. And they had I think it was recycling and waste reduction curriculum. And they have a little button about, pledge to reduce, reuse, recycle, or whatever. And so I still had that button on this one jacket that I must have worn at the conference, because I don't know how else it would have gotten on there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One of my favorite go-tos. So like you all know Jim Callahan, who's on these calls all the time, frequently. He and I met back when he was volunteer at Chabot Center, and I was sort of at the entry level point of my career there, just kind of making a transition from sort of a scheduling role into an instructor educator role in environmental science. But we developed this activity at the time he was there, and these are 2 examples of it, or 2.
Oh, wow.
So these are atmospheric models, essentially. And we started with rice and recycled plastic bottles as sort of the colored rice. But the idea is that these colored beads are the atmospheric constituents, right? So, and we created more open-ended exploration in that this one says Earth, but we'd actually give these to the participants, could be adults, could be kids, without the labels, and they have to kind of just sit with them for a minute, make some observation. What do you notice? What do you wonder about these things? And they start to notice the color differences and the different, how much is inside of each one, which represents the density of the atmosphere. And it was a great springboard into a whole conversation about something we can't see, the atmosphere. And it's what I really love about going to these these are preforms for 2-liter bottles. So before they're blown up into 2-liter bottles. So they look like test tubes, but they're not technically. But it's so transportable. I mean, you can get, we had like, 6 of them. We had 4 inner planets plus Jupiter and the Earth's moon. And then this little, like, figure out which one is which one is Earth, which one is Mars, which one, what do you notice, and then you start unpacking things like, there's small beads in Earth, and you can see the yellow one there, that's the carbon dioxide. So that you talk about trace ones, but again, rather than let them unpack it first, let them sort of wonder and explore. And then you can use it as a springboard to go a lot of directions, whether you're doing like an Earth-Mars comparison or a climate connection. But having that hands-on, again, like you're all talking about, and something that you can literally pull those out of your back pocket, right? And just sort of throw them on the table, and then people start to wonder about them.
That kind of activity for me is really great for like transitioning from a different topic. For example, if students are studying the solar system, and then to take it into the atmosphere. I also love those kinds of models because it's a good conversation to have about what makes a good model and why would we need a model for this. And those are really, I don't know, for me, that's a great way to get kids to start thinking about, well, how else could we model this? What else could we use to show the same thing?
Yeah, very much so. We did similar idea, Carrie, like to sort of started with like almost a conversation about the Earth's atmosphere in this one thing we did, a little PD session. And then like we asked them to bring manipulatives with them. So whatever they could find, colored some things, 6 different colors. And now just use your manipulatives to create your mental model of what the atmosphere is, and then we just kind of would unpack it from there. We scaffold on a little more information, have them step back and see what they did with that. And that, like you're saying, but I also I totally hear what you're saying about transitioning, because it's like the Earth, you could go the other way too, right? Like the Earth and then the Earth within our neighbors, and Mars being the most closest Earth analog type of a conversation, but yet we can't breathe the atmosphere, stuff like that. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, even as an adult, I appreciate having something to touch and be able to take away. We were talking about having buttons to Ginger, which is not as educational, obviously, as something sciencey, but so having something that people can take away would be cool. And I think maybe the audience, it sounds like the audience at NAAWE is more geared toward, they're all education folks, rather than like AGU is more scientists, it sounds like. So you have to kind of play into your audience a little bit. And I think that typically Queen just gives a PowerPoint, but I'll have to think about ways that we can make it interactive, because typically when we do have an interactive presentation, we have folks go search for resources on Queen and use the filters and try to figure out what, if you wanted to find an activity on Queen about solar energy for grades 3 through 5, that's usually what we do for interactivity, but I don't know, I have to think about that.
Well, and you know, maybe you could sample, you know, do that, but say, here are 3 of our favorites, or, you know, here are 2
True.
of our favorites, and do it like one primary and one secondary or high school, you know, focused, or look at the strands, because they do a good job of like having different strands. And, you know, for example, I think that climate and environmental justice are, you know, an interdisciplinary, intersectional issue. And so if you have a teacher that has to teach science, but wants to include EJ, you know, and doesn't know where to start, or is in a school where they know that their student population is affected by, you know, asthma or something like that, like, do we have a curriculum unit already there that they could pull out? And maybe we don't, maybe we need to find it.
So true. Yeah. Thanks for the feedback, everyone. This is good. Glad we're talking about it.
Yeah, Eric, you should try to go. I mean, because you're in the Bay Area, right?
Yeah, is it Tucson?
Yeah,
is
it's
that-
Tucson. It's a super
Yeah.
easy, you know,
Yeah.
straight flight. I'm sure you can find direct flights and stuff. So as far as getting to a conference, it would definitely be a lower entry cost, I would think.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into it. Also, Gina met with Alicia before this call about the Clean Ambassador program, because
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like signing up for that.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, and she mentioned that they do provide a partial stipend to cover
Nice.
some of the costs for conferences too. It's like $250 which would, you know, cover a lot. Getting, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks, Ginger. I'll definitely check it out. Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of non-formal educators there. So, you know, I think that they are probably also very much looking for resources. One of the funniest things I learned at the Spokane conference was the they call it like parts, teaching with parts or something like that. Have you guys heard of that? Like at nature centers or arboretums, they actually put pieces and parts out on the ground so that the kids can find sticks and leaves and
Wow.
feathers and things like that, but they don't leave them out, like especially like an arboretum, because you want your arboretum to look tidy. So they actually take these things out, which is really funny, because I used to work at a nature center and we did use props. Like I had rubber lizards and rubber snakes and things like that. And we didn't keep the nature center tidy, but it was so that the kids could just use their eyes, and we taught them to use their, you know, their nature eyes or their scientist eyes, and they had to look really carefully, but at least that way they got to find something if we didn't see any real wildlife, which we usually did still see real wildlife. But it was just hilarious to me that these people were like carrying sticks and feathers and stuff out into natural areas instead of just having them natural.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
They want to look neat and tidy, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Eric, I'm happy to hear too that you talked to Alicia about that, because I think it's a great, I'm biased, but I think it's a great opportunity that we have for people, and it has not gotten the traction that we wanted it to, I think. And so someone like you, who is a clean hero, like it's just exciting to think about that, and that you'll be able to utilize that opportunity. I think we just, and a lot of teachers too, we put it out there, but they're so, people are so overworked that only so much can stick, I guess. So
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I kind of feel like it'll allow me to kind of dig deeper into the 3 areas of work, you know, especially the database with all the activities, and that just can pay benefits in so many ways. Because I mean, sometimes, you know, we've talked about this in our last mini webinars, but there's such a huge ecosystem of stuff out there, you know, versus like when I was doing these institutes and we were creating curriculum 15 years ago, there was a lot less, and they were a lot less organized. So there's just like this mushrooming of information and activity, but then you feel like, where do I start? So to have like a vetted collection, that's tied to standards, and this will force me into really looking at what Clean has in the database, because I've used it a little bit for things. But then like tying back to when Amy was on the call, they're all about, for that LOI, they don't want us to reinvent the wheel. They want us to kind of look at what's there and leverage that and find opportunities to use things that are there, maybe build on that work or work collectively to build towards something bigger. So anyway, thanks, Gina. Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that. And it's, and it's a low stakes. It's what she was saying in the call today too, that she encouraged, you all are encouraging, is to make the presentations your own. So it's not, they have like, you all have the presentations, the Google slide decks already built and all that, but she said, you don't have to use those cookie cutter. You can, she was saying, personalize it, make it, tell your own climate story, tell what you use from Clean, make it real and alive. And that's the same kind of the approach that I've taken over the years, I think, to some extent, but also like when I did the climate reality training, I said the same thing, what's your climate story? Because what you tell them about you and why you're energized around this, hopefully empowers them. Yeah, hopefully trickles out to the folks that are there too. And they're thinking in the same way, like, why do I care about this? What, like Tiffany was saying earlier in the call, is there something hyper local in my environment that's happening that's triggering my climate anxiety, my climate interest, and what's propelling me to kind of want to be engaged in this? So I think that resonated with what Alicia said today when we met.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the slide deck is great, and I like that she said that you can personalize it. And we use it a lot for tons of different things presenting about Clean, so it's a good one. But yeah.
So I have a teaching story I can share with you guys if nobody else has anything else. Just while we finish up. So a couple of weeks ago, we had, they call it STEM Con, and it's our STEM high school puts it together, and other high schools can send kids, although I didn't have any in my session. But anyway, I went to a session that my friend, who's like the classic absent-minded professor, climate scientist guy, like he's just kind of, whoo. So we did En-ROADS, and he talked for 45 minutes or more. And I was just like watching these kids and thinking, okay, where is this going to go? And are they really going to do it? And then they broke into groups, and they had to look at the different choices in the En-ROADS model and pick which ones they wanted and come up and present. And they actually paid attention and engaged for that last half hour and had some really good conversations, and were clearly able to articulate their choices. And it was really, really cool, because I was very, very concerned about whether they were really paying attention to Steve or not, because he's also a very soft talker. And so
Yeah.
you're just like looking at these teenagers going, oh my God, they are not mentally attached, but they were. It was pretty cool. So yay.
Especially too, since it's I don't know about you, but anytime I see a graph, my eyes glaze over a little bit.
Yeah.
And even though it's an interactive graph, I still am just like, this is a lot for my brain. I do a lot better with words than I do with numbers, and it's just it can be a lot to digest. So
yeah, the other thing was they all picked like the pricing carbon, because they said, that deals with everything, and then they picked the other choices. So they all made that connection, because I don't remember him saying that specifically in his thing, even though he's a major volunteer for CCL, and obviously they support pricing on carbon. So it was interesting. And
what state are you in again, Juju?
I'm in Washington.
Washington.
In Eastern Washington. Yeah, and this guy actually was on part of the team for one of the, I think it was the original IPCC report. So he was a contributor. So yeah.
Cool. That's funny.
Yeah. It is.
I'm
fun.
glad it ended well.
I know, I was too.
Yeah.
yeah, bunch of old white guys, CCL volunteers. And then I was in there and I was like, kind of, like, well, yeah, so switching to electric cars may not really reduce the carbon that much, but we still have the intersectional problem of asthma and public health. So it still has a really important benefit, even if it doesn't decrease carbon overall that much. So, so I was throwing those little, but
Interjecting a little.
yeah, or like, reducing the amount of meat we eat. It actually is more significant, but again, not enough. And, but again, there's these other alternate, environmental factors that come into play. So anyway, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So,
Cool.
all right. Well, I'm going to go find breakfast because I haven't eaten yet.
Yes, definitely. That's important. Thanks everyone for joining, and
Thank
have a
you.
good rest of your day.
See you all.
Yeah, feel free to reach out if
Thanks,
you want any more
everyone.
ideas about the conference.
Will do. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.